we are. Sorry. Okay. Everybody heard me anyway. Okay. Next time I'm going to read it properly in Te Reo, I promise. Now, apologies. What apologies do we have? We have an apology from Richard Mansell, the chair of the Waikanae Community Board, and from Arithia Rauretti, the Nahapu Otaki representative. Is that the only two apologies?
We don't have David Cochrane.
No, he's online. He's online. I should say, just at the start of the meeting, that we've got David Cochrane online. There you are, David. And we've got Lawrence Kirby online. And who else?
No, that's it. The rest of
That's all. All right. Okay. Notifications from elected members of any interests. Are there any? Oh, sorry, of course. Someone moved the apology, moved by Janet, seconded by Liz. In favour, aye. Say contrary, no. The ayes have it. Thank you for that. Okay. Public speaking time for items related to the agenda. There are no people registered to speak, I understand, right? So we proceed. Members' business, public speaking time responses, leave of absence, matters of an urgent nature. Are there any? No. Updates, there are none, right? So we'll move to the first item of business, which is the Health and Safety Quarterly Report, which will be presented by Diane. Diane, yes. Thank you, Diane.
Good morning, everybody. In terms of the quarterly report for July to September, I take it that the report is as read and happy to take your questions. However, just before we do questions, I've spoken to the chair and he has asked me to provide a little bit of context around the topic of WorkSafe improvement notices that the council was issued in this quarter. So WorkSafe issued us with 2 improvement notices, and how these came about was due to a member of the public was on a contractor's own premises and saw a contractor working on a pipe. The pipe was a previous asset of the council's, and the WorkSafe inspector, when they came to look at that council pipe, which was on and no longer owned by the council, but it was on the premises of another worker's business, picked up the standard operating procedures for working with asbestos that was associated with that pipe work, which had the council's name on it. So that's how we got into the loop. But the bottom line is, the WorkSafe inspector was linking that issue to us, and that's how it came through us. The WorkSafe inspector, as part of their inspection around asbestos and what does the council do for working with asbestos, identified that our process that we have in place for workers wearing masks was not adequate enough for what we need to do going forward, and that is the result of the second notice, which has been addressed. So we didn't have a process for mask wearing workers because generally we didn't do that work, we contracted it in, but this has just raised the awareness that we actually need to be more prepared for all scenarios. So it's been a great learning experience for us to be really clear about our documentation when other people use what was our asset, and also for preparing for the future for our risk areas for our staff in the event that we do need to do work which does require full PPE, which is the respiratory masks, which need to be fitted and fitted by a certified tester. So we've now got that in place.
Thanks for that explanation, Diane. I mean, just to quickly comment, it seems that, in fact, he was not carrying out council work on council premises or anything that was not council work, in fact. For technical reasons, it somehow come to the council. So that does make something of a difference, all right? But there is a general question of the extent to which we have adequate training and certification and process for contractors on health and safety issues as well, which is a more general question.
Yes, so as a result of this, as I said, it's been a great learning experience for us. So what we have done is we have followed up with, you'll remember that we've talked about the Site Safe accreditation program that we've got.
Yep.
So we're now working on a process within that if a subcontractor or a contractor who is not on Site Safe or who is not on an equally authorised qualification level with a notifiable company that we recognise, then an EPO can't be raised for that contractor or subcontractor to do the work, and it will flag to us. So we're currently working with IT at the moment to bring in that sort of check system so that we've got another check for contractors and subcontractors. And sitting alongside that, we also have a program that's called Water Outlook, which gives us the ability for the project manager to verify through site checks that what has been said will be done is actually being done. Because, as you know, in this day and age, you do have a lot of subcontractors who do then end up subbing out their work, and sometimes it can be a subcontractor or a subcontractor. So Water Outlook will, and the EPO system change with IT for us, will enable us another level of checking.
Thank you, Diane. And just also note on page 11, there's reference to an asbestos management framework having been developed as well. Right?
Absolutely, that's for our built assets.
Yep. Okay, any comments or questions on the report? Jocelyn first.
Yes, thank you. It's my understanding as a PCBU, which council is, that all other contractors and workers that are employed all have to be on the same page with health and safety. So no one can devolve responsibility to someone else saying that you need to do this. You all need to be on the same page to actually know that all the health and safety matters have been covered off. And I suppose I accept the I suppose the explanation we've been given here, but I suppose I don't know whether council staff deal with asbestos pipes, but also too, when it comes to asbestos, potentially there has been and will be demolition to do with KCDC buildings, and that, you know, hopefully some of the stuff has actually moved into that area as well, because you know, this is a, you know, asbestos obviously kills, and it's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of whether they are council staff or contractors or subcontractors or wherever they are in the system, are all on the same page with the same level. So in many respects, the contractor should have actually, you know, been aware of this as well, but it's a case of where all parties have got to be on the same page with the correct levels. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, and we do have a asbestos register for all our properties and assets that are known to contain asbestos or are thought to contain asbestos, and safety operating procedures around working with those. But this instance was out of our control.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Glenn, you had a point. Yep. Proceed, Glenn. Right. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just a quick question. So just confirm in my head, so this wasn't on council land, wasn't a council asset anymore, and council had nothing to do with the asbestos?
That's correct.
Yeah, great, okay. Just, so has this triggered a review of other areas where we don't normally work in because we contract it out, but we still should have procedures in case it happens one day, such as working in trenches? We wouldn't normally work in trenches, but our contractors do. So does this, what does that mean for your team? do we now need to have procedures for all the stuff that we'll never do but our contractors do, just in case we may do it one day? Is that was the intent of what the inspectors were saying, or no?
Not exactly, because we do have procedures in place for that, for the work. The bit that we didn't have was around a certified fit tester for the respiratory masks, because we've not done that before. But through this exercise, we thought, well, why wouldn't we? We've got everything else.
Yep.
So we might as well do that. So we have brought that into our sort of menu of what we are prepared for and what we have documented.
Yep. So there will be a review of those other really high risk areas to make sure that our SOPs are in line with current thinking.
Yes, that's part of the continuous improvement and the learning that we take out from this.
Great, thank you.
David, you've got a comment.
Thank you. I just want to take it a bit wider. The pipe was in the contractor's workshop, and it's had our label on it, so it obviously came out of our ground and had been our pipe at some stage, I assume. If they missed the mask wearing, we just need to know that when they're dealing with the pipe itself, when it was in our ground and had water in it, presumably, that there's no risk to the public from the way they handled that. I mean, if they didn't wear the mask, did they know how to saw through an asbestos pipe properly? Was it a gross failure or just a minor thing? I'm sure the processes will be right, but I want to know that the public haven't been exposed to fibres or anything in the water.
So initially, I mean, I'll answer the first part, and then if I may, I'll just pass to Sean to answer the second part of the question. But the first part of the question is, we have procedures in place that are verified and carried out and supervised for our staff when they are working on our pipe network. Now, our staff only do that sort of work in our pipe network in emergency situations. So we have got our systems and processes in place, but in regard to your question regarding the water and the public safety, could I just defer to Sean, who can answer that?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I sort of missed the start of that line of questioning, but I'm assuming this is about the WorkSafe audit.
Yeah. So what I was really saying, if this subcontractor
Yes.
wasn't based on the mask wearing, just need an assurance they're not sort of a bit slack generally, and if they took the pipe out of the ground, because it somehow magic into their workshop,
Yes.
it must have come out of the ground, that in sawing through the pipe or doing whatever they disconnecting it, they didn't expose the public to any risk from any shop practice of theirs. That's what we just want to know. That the
Right. So no, I guess I can talk to our procedures in terms of that element of asbestos and the work that we do, and that certainly is the case, that the public are not exposed. So we have a standard operating procedure that requires a whole lot of mitigation to be put in place whenever we're doing work around asbestos pipes. The section of pipe that was at the depot, we weren't able to sort of trace it back to a particular project or a piece of work that was undertaken for us, but nonetheless, that was what the subcontractor referenced when they were asked about it. So, and the reference to the masks was really about sizing the masks appropriately. So again, there wasn't anything picked up that says you're lacking in terms of your overall process around asbestos management. There were two things that they wanted us to refresh, and those were the issues that Diane's mentioned. So no, I don't believe any certainly members of the public are not exposed to that risk as a result of the operating procedure that we have for managing asbestos. And as Diane's mentioned, that is now what we will be making sure that any contractors or subcontractors who are doing work are following those procedures as well.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Sean, that's helpful. And David raised the important point. What the heck happened before it got into this person's private backyard or whatever it is? What happened? Whatever did he do before it got there, I suppose, is the real question. But anyway, thank you for that explanation, Sean and Diane. Anything else on health and safety?
Yes, I have a
Yes,
couple
please.
of points. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things from me. One is under the EAP heading. very aware that we are going through a bit of an organisation restructure, and we also have a lot of political uncertainty around the Affordable Waters Programme, what that might mean for staffing. And we're getting close to Christmas as well, and I'm just concerned about what's being done in that space to preempt any wellbeing issues amongst staff. That's the first thing. Second thing is I just would like to query whether this report is going to full council for noting, because as Jocelyn rightly pointed out, we all have a responsibility under health and safety, and I think at the very least this should go to full council to be aware of what's happening, and even if just noting that it's there, it's been discussed by this committee, and perhaps a bit of summary of the committee's conclusions on the report as well.
Thank you. I was going to say, I think that's entirely appropriate that any work safe improvement notices which are served on us should be reported to council, right? So I think that can easily be done.
But I think the full report, as a matter of course, should go to council for noting, as opposed to being hidden at a committee
I'm
level.
quite happy with that. I'm sure the committee is. All right, Darren, do you have a view on that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I wouldn't say it's hidden. I think that's a misinterpretation. This is an open committee, open to the public, so everyone can see the report. Yeah. Not normal. If you want us to take it there, we can take it there for noting. If I come back to your specific question, not a restructure of the organisation, just simply making sure that we are planning for our future, and then I've got the appropriate people in the appropriate places. I don't intend to reduce the headcount of the organisation, but change can be uncomfortable at any time. You're correct in your assertion of I guess what's happening politically as we sit and wait to see what a new government might mean for not just local government, but for all of us, and what the current reform program means, and if that is to continue or not. The report does make comment that some of the, I guess, increase in EAP assistance has been as a result of what's happening in the water space, and DIA has advised us that until they understand what is happening, that process has been put on hold, which doesn't help us. I spoke to the organisation yesterday about the intention for what some of the change might look like for them. We're into 2.5 weeks now of feedback. We'll understand those submissions later this month and finalise what that looks like. But again, it's really important, and I made this quite clear, and it's not been my intention to reduce headcount. It's always been about ensuring that we have the right people in the right roles so that we maintain our level of relevance.
Can I just clarify? I wasn't implying that there would be a reduction in headcount, but there is, potentially a level of uncertainty around whether people's roles might change and how they might change, etc., etc. So, any uncertainty like that can create wellbeing issues, in my experience. So, I think really the solution is really good and frequent communication with staff, and I'm sure that's underway. I'm not being critical or assuming the worst. I'm just really wanting to bring attention to this. It is a matter that we do need to keep an eye on especially over the next couple of months prior to Christmas.
Yeah, I think that point is well made, and it's not just a question of numbers, it's a question of roles, and it's a question of location too, which may be... And in fact, David and I received a briefing from... You've got a dedicated group working on the whole Three Waters issue, or whatever we now call it, and they did say to us that the personnel issues were right at the forefront of their mind, so I feel confident that this is being addressed within council, right? Thank you. Anything further before we move on? Yes, the Mayor.
Yeah, so just generally around bringing this report twice to two committees. I did initially think that might be a good idea. I'm just aware that we're We're having challenges with that, with reports coming to subcommittees and then coming to committees, and where the kind of responsibility lies. We have actually in our delegations, as a council, delegated to this committee considerations around health and safety. And that's where our due diligence lies, sometimes in delegation, rather than having to consider every report. Relitigating this report as a noting report at council, I think, would be time consuming and potentially unnecessary. It already comes as, I'm presuming the risk and assurance comes as recommendations and reports from committees and community boards, which is a report that comes regularly to council. So you can clearly see in that report that this committee has met and considered the health and safety report, and then you can go to this committee agenda and find it. It's not buried particularly deep within the council website. So I think as long as we highlight that in that report, that the report has come here and has been considered, if there are any particular issues that come out of the report, they can be highlighted through that mechanism. And I think we need to be aware that that happens as a committee, and if there's anything that we think should be highlighted through that report, then we should recommend that that is highlighted as a noting, and then people can come into this and find out more information about it. That would be, to me, a more streamlined approach than seeing this entire report twice.
Well, I have to say, as chair, I'm persuaded by the comments from the mayor and also by what is apparent reluctance from Darren also to go through a process of putting the whole thing before council. So I think we will adopt the mayor's suggestion, which basically is that we would report just that particular item as a matter of particular interest. That's right. Is that all right? If I've understood you correctly, Janet. All right. I mean, I can well understand that council has got enough, with due respect, has enough papers before it without wanting to plough through an excellent report from an excellent health and safety report, I might say, but it may be a bit much asking him to look at it regularly every month or whatever.
Yeah, I disagree about the whole.
Jocelyn, I'll take your comment now, right?
So so I hear what the mayor is saying, and so this is actually not a subcommittee. I hear what you're saying in relation to subcommittees. My question is, are there any reports that go from this committee to either council or SOF?
Yes, one report that goes is the report on the audit, right?
Yes.
On the audit results, which has been done. The appointment of the auditor is another one, right, which goes to council. Remind me of some others, Mark.
So I suppose the reason I ask that question is because it's not, at times reports do go from this committee to others, and considering what is in that report, I agree with Councillor Coe.
Well,
what am I to do as the chair sitting in the middle? Help me here,
so
somebody.
I think it's been the issue that's been raised is how a council is kept aware of issues that arise in this report. We'll take that offline. We'll have a discussion with staff about the best way to make sure that flow through of information happens as necessary. If the whole report has to go to council, that's fine. But yeah, we'll take it offline and decide what to do about that. It's been flagged.
So it makes it so much easier for me if it's taken offline and some others can discuss it and tell me what I should have been saying, all right? So that's what we'll do. But point is noted and it'll be discussed further offline, okay? Thank you. All right. Okay, shall we now move on? Are we ready for the next item? Oh, sorry. Of course. Yes, yes, God. I get confused by all the list of instructions I've got to do what and when. All right, so I have to. I move that the Risk and Assurance Committee notes the Health and Safety Quarterly Report for the period 1 July 2023 to 30 September 23, attached as Appendix 1 to the report. So I move that. Will somebody second it? Do I have a seconder? Glenn, thank you. I'll put the motion in favour, say aye. Contrary to no, I think the ayes have it. Okay. Next item is report on control findings. Is this going to be presented by Sharon or Mark?
It'll be presented by Sam.
Oh, Sam, that's right, sorry, yes.
He's right next to us.
Oh, sorry, there we are. Yes, Sam, it's nice to have our external auditor here, all right? Okay, so I'll leave it to you, Sam.
Cool. Thank you, Chair. So included in the papers is our report on control findings from the recently concluded FY23 audit. Pleasingly, there's a low number of items and some progress on those that were carried forward from the 2022 year, and none of the items are we would classify as high or significant risk for the committee's attention. So really just happy to take the report as read and assist with any questions members may have.
Thank you, Sam. I mean, I think it's a fairly straightforward report. There are 3 items which have now been closed from last year. There's one which is still active, which is accuracy of response and resolution times. This is page 17, paragraph 8. And then there's a new one, which is the overhead rate, which is applied to projects. All right. So I think they're all relatively straightforward, but I'll take any questions or comments. Cam, you're next, right? Is that you? Yes, Cam? Sorry? Oh, we know who you are, Cam. Don't worry.
I'm just waiting for it to go.
We know who you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. I was just a little bit bemused on page 24 of the report, the moderate risk where the accuracy of response and resolution times. It said in the observation that the completion time cannot be earlier than the logged time. However, it says for water supply, we noted 3 instances of urgent responses, 6% of the population, were negative. So if you can't put the finish time before the start time, how could it be negative? I was just wondering, that just didn't quite make sense to me. You may not know the fine details of the, sorry, but...
That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't have the details at hand. I think it highlights the issue that the performance measures council reports are based on data drawn from the business, and just the QA on whether it's negative or representative of council's performance may frustrate the reporting of the results, which is the essence of the finding. If you'd like us to reconcile the two and report back, happy to do so.
Quite work, or didn't quite figure, so...
Look, I think this is just a tricky performance indicator, really, quite tricky. And obviously, if there's any delay in recording the complaint or whatever it is, and then you have the completion or action reported later, we're at risk of overstating our performance. That's the problem, right?
Yes.
But look, it's just a tricky one, that's all. It just depends on people recording stuff immediately and accurately, and record both when the issue is raised and then when the issue is resolved, that's all. So look, it's just a tricky one. And we can assume that if there are unders and overs, that the movement from year to year might be something that might tell us something about the level of performance. That's all. Jocelyn?
Thank you, through the chair. So, service requests, well, I suppose the response times, or even responses to service requests comes up, reasonably often. And I suppose I'm just trying to tease out here whether it's the way they're managed by staff or whether it's our system we use. Is our system fit for purpose?
Good point. Mark would like to reply. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I think it's a fair question, Councillor. I think it's both, to be honest. I think a system's only as good as the information that you put in the system. We know in terms of the system that we've got, there are multiple input fields which can be confusing. It depends on who actually logs the service request. So it's fundamentally what we've actually put in our updated management responsibility is that we will actually do an audit of this. There are things in the system that we can't change. We have actually gone back to the vendor to ask for, I guess, some optimisation and some simplification of the service request system. That functionality is not there. And like anything, obviously our service request system is embedded right throughout the whole organisation because we're a business of multiple businesses. But like everything, all our systems do have a finite life, and we are actually at the moment looking at alternate systems that we can, that in the last 5 years there have been new service request systems to hit the market. So we're not only are we looking at that, but we're also looking at how can we use the system that we have better. Can we do some staff training? Can we even change our processes? So it is actually quite a piece of work. It is a point that hasn't been closed out yet. It is being carried forward, but quite a lot of work is happening in that space. And I'm hoping to see real tangible progress by putting the internal audit function on that as well.
Thank you. So how old is the system?
So our system is called Magic, and 27 years. I mean,
It's 27 years old.
Well, we've had Magic for 27 years. Every year we're doing upgrades. We do upgrade. The system does get upgraded. We're on the latest version that we can be without being in the cloud. So we are as up to date as we can be. But the functionality and the simplification is not being provided from the vendor, which is why we are starting to look at other systems.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is a standard package, and we can modify it, but I presume standard packages like this are used by other local bodies, and maybe other local bodies use other packages. I don't know, but I think that, Jocelyn, I think the point is that there is a willingness to look at this to try and address the points, right? Thank you. Anything further under the reports on control findings while we have Sam here? If there's not, I will move. Where is it? God.
Oh, it's on page. It's on page 16.
Yes, I move that the Risk and Assurance Committee received this report, including Ernst & Young's report on control findings for the year ended 30th June 2023, attached as Appendix 1, and notes regular progress against the control findings will be provided, and Ernst & Young will reassess these control findings when they complete their audit for the financial year ended 30th June 2024. I will move from the chair. Is there a seconder, please? Thank you, Jocelyn. All in favour will please indicate aye, or against no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much, everybody. Now we move to the quarterly Treasury compliance reports. That can be presented by Jing or Jen. No, thank you, Jing. Okay. And I think you're going to refer to that error on page 25 here. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jing. Anything we'd like to draw to our attention in particular?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just take the report as read, and before you ask questions, that I want to draw your attention on page 35 of the report. We discovered an error on this page is the year-to-date budget on the weighted average cost of borrowings. We had in the long-term plan figure 2.95, which should be 4.35%. So it's not a major shift, and at the end of September, we are on 4.51%, which is slightly higher than what we budgeted, just because, as you know, OCR, even though it hasn't moved a lot, but all the banks' mortgages rates has increased slightly. So that is a mistake on page 35. Thank you.
Thank you, Jing. Well, I mean, we all know the importance of our Treasury management policy and adherence to it. We all know the impact that the quality of Treasury management has on our rating, right? So we are in good shape in terms of compliance with it, but there may be questions that people would like to raise. Are there any questions or comments? None? Well, hunky-dory, is that okay? Councillor Coe thinks it's hunky-dory. I will move that the Risk and Assurance Committee notes the Council's full compliance with Treasury Management Policy for the 3 months ended 3rd of September 2023. I move from the Chair, second by the Mayor. In favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Okay, thank you very much, Jing. Okay, keep up the good work. All right. Now, the top 10 organisational risks. Our lovely colour charts and arrows are before us. Ninka is going to present this. Thank you, Ninka. Does everybody know Ninka? You're relatively new, right? Not really? New to me. New to me. You're right.
New to the role.
All right, Ninka. Anyway, it's nice to see you, in any case.
Kia ora kata katoa. Most of you will know me around the table, but I've started in this role in August, but I've actually been around for 15 years.
Is that all?
That's all. I will take the report as read. It's a very short introduction report to the heat map report and answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Yeah, it might be that some people have issues about movements, what movements or changes have there been, and so on. But as I think we've discussed before, that this is a nice way of presenting information, even though when you read the detail behind each of the 10, there's quite a lot of stuff there. But the objective is to move down and across, basically, to reduce the impact and to reduce the probability, right? So it is open for discussion. Yes, Bernard.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It relates to risk relating to inadequate safeguards against cyber security threats.
What page, Ben? Just give us the
It's on page 38.
Page 38. Cyber security risks. We haven't been held to ransom yet, thank God. No, not 38. That must be 63, Bernard, I think. Right.
From the
Page
soft
63,
copy.
organisational risks. 7, inadequate safeguards against cyber security threats.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And my question is that we get a report saying there are no cyber security threats, but it's too general. I think this was raised by David earlier at an earlier meeting, and I think it should be broken down to subsections. So about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I received an email from a councillor saying, please, I wish to discuss something with you discreetly. Discreetly was the key word. So, and a number of other community board members and elected members received such emails. So I just think that this type of technology, cybersecurity, it's growing, and we should be made more aware of it, and it should be broken down to subsections so we can really get a hands-on to what's happening.
Well, I guess that raises the point about what information is reported on such events as you just mentioned. I don't know what it was. Somebody got into the system and was able to email, somebody from outside was able to email councillors. Is that what the issue was? I don't know. These were not this was not a genuine email. No.
Yeah, so when something like that happens, I report it to Democracy Services. When something like that happens with my email, I report it to Democracy Services straight away. And in fact, there was one from my email. Somebody created an email in my name and sent it out, and actually somebody fell victim to it, so it was unfortunate.
So what do we do, and what's the response?
I'll start with a response. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mark.
So thank you for the question. I think what's important to understand is the top 10 risk register is for exactly that. It's identifying the risks. So it's not an incident register. So these risks have been identified that could potentially happen, and what controls do we have in place to prevent that from happening on our planned objectives. Where we do have some emails that are suspicious and are reported, the team will work through that. We actually get We actually try, we on a daily basis, there's about 7,000 attempts to access our network from all over the world.
On a daily basis?
On a daily basis. And it's a balancing act. So if we put out into the public domain everything that we're doing to protect our systems, we're actually just saying to the hackers, this is what we've got in place. So this is a particularly sensitive area that what we're advising the committee is that we are very much aware that we are at risk of cyber attacks. We have controls in place. We have actually moved. Our initial risk assessment was critical. You can see in the report that we're actually closely at our target. It really comes down to what the council wants to invest in cyber security. At the moment, we did a comprehensive audit. We've actually fared very, very well against that audit. But this report is actually showing the committee that we're aware of the risk and how we're preventing that from happening. It isn't a report to say what has happened and how we've managed it. It's a different report. And as I said, you have to be very careful what you put into the public domain about what our controls and what our security levels are.
Oh, sorry, David, you're very far beyond there. I'm sorry, I can barely see you, but please.
That's all right. No, Bernard mentioned that I'd mentioned something. There are two things being conflated here. This is the general how are we tracking on the various risks. The particular incidents are meant to be in a separate report that tells us there was a car crash, one of our vehicles was damaged, that somebody left a computer on a bus, that the mayor's email got hacked. You're right, Mark, no detail, just the mayor's email was compromised, if you like, put a word like that. That doesn't tell a hacker anything. But those incidents are meant to be being reported, plus the Auditor General's raised a question or some regulator or other is picking on us. So we've got that from health and safety, but we haven't got it. In our first meeting, we said it would be good to have in each report sort of incidents noted so that we're aware of it. I mean, if the mayor hadn't just explained that thing, we would not have known that the email had been hacked and malicious messages sent. We don't need to know any more than that, and an assurance that democracy services are handling it. But we shouldn't be ambushed by the Capital Observer telling us a story like that.
So, and you would. So
they're two separate things. What we're looking at now is the general, how we're going on the top 10, and they all need to be heading to the bottom left. And then the separate concept is what things should be reported to us as a matter of course. And that can be things like someone left a laptop on a bus.
But we're told that this is not intended to be an incident register.
No. That's right. That's what I'm saying. The incident register is an entirely separate thing, but I'm not sure that it's there anywhere.
So there should be regular reporting by anybody to democracy services when an event like this occurs. Is that what we're saying?
We're saying the report to this committee should include, and if you go back to our first couple of meetings, we listed a series of things that we were to be told as a matter of routine at each meeting. We're getting the health and safety stuff. We're not being told there was a laptop left on a bus, the mayor's email or a councillor's email was hacked and malicious email sent, that sort of thing. It's just not there. So Bernard's right in the sense that it's not there, but this isn't the place to raise that. That should be covered in the basically the general CE's report to the committee.
All right. Do you have any comments at all, Darren, on that? No? I mean, this is life, isn't it? I mean, for God's sake.
It's not nothing.
Nothing people who say, "Oh, do you know that you've been hacked on Facebook?" And I say, "Yes, I do. Just ignore it and don't keep telling me." Right? I've changed my password. Anyway.
I've got a suggestion. So maybe it was 5 years ago. We had a particular workshop around this, and so that councillors were aware of the kinds of things that could happen. And the world's moved on since then, and we've got a whole new group of elected members, independents, and a whole new set of risks. I heard something on the radio about how AI is influencing the ability of people to hack into systems. So I think we look at how we can inform ourselves a little bit more about this and tighten up how we report incidents, and the role of this committee in, as David Online has suggested, in assessing those incidents and having that reporting back to this committee, because I think, yeah, Bernie's right. It's a growth industry, and quite damaging, and potentially extremely damaging.
Not to mention bloody annoying too. Anyway, yes. Glenn, sorry, Glenn and then Cam, right?
I think
Oh, sorry, Jocelyn.
I got bounced as well. Sorry.
You're there too. I've got you. I've got you.
Do you want to go Jocelyn first or? Okay. So page 42 of the report shows the risk summary of the organisational, the top 10. Shows them beautifully with their graphics, but it also shows that we're actually only at target out of 2 of the 10 different areas.
Can we just deal with the cybersecurity one first?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
If there are points on that,
Yep,
might be
that's
better.
no problem.
Right?
I'm happy
That's
to
okay.
defer.
Right? Is yours, Glenn? Is yours on? Jocelyn, is yours on cyber? Yes, please proceed. Right.
Thank you. Yes. So, so it obviously seems that our council firewalls and other security measures are capturing a lot of stuff. My question relates to the heat map on page 63. I have to say I really like these heat maps. What it seems to me is that we have landed where our target is, which is basically a possible likelihood and a moderate consequence. Is that, and I would have, I'm interested to know why we're not moving further to the bottom left and into that green zone, particularly given this matter and the technology out there to create, or basically create more threats or more incidents is actually better than a threat.
Mark, I'll ask you to respond to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I know Ninka wants to respond as well. But so Councillor, so where there's a will, there's a way.
Mm-hmm.
So there will always be someone taking an opportunity, and we have to look at how much resource do we want to put into it, how much money do we want to invest in our cyber security. So how we come up with the target level of risk comes through a number of factors. So we have had an independent audit that an independent auditor has looked at the organisation, looked at all our systems, looked at our possible avenues and areas. I think there's a lot of inherent risk in cybersecurity because it is getting more sophisticated every single day. If we were having a target risk of the bottom, the lower left-hand corner, we would be coming and asking you for millions and millions more money to invest in our firewalls, and we'd be asking you for a team of about 15 people. So it is a balancing act. So we do assess the risk. We take it very seriously. We know full well what are the consequences of, we hold a lot of information, private information, but we have a lot of resources available to us. We have a lot of controls in place. We are working through the treatments, and like everything, you actually can't get below inherent risk, and cybersecurity has got very high inherent risk. And that is probably as low as you can go for this organisation.
So as low as we can go based on the money that potentially...
As low as we can go for the money, but as well as the inherent risk. So the inherent risk of cybersecurity attacks is always high because of the sophistication. And we are audited every single year. And we are... central government has a dedicated cybersecurity unit that sends out notifications of all the latest scams, all the latest attacks, And so we're well connected with that. So we do a lot of work in this space.
I'm sure, but I suppose the thing that, is my flag is not necessarily the likelihood, but the fact is that if it does occur, it has a moderate consequence.
Look, absolutely, and we know that. I just wanted to backtrack on a comment that I made. Look, every single day we get thousands of attempts, and I absolutely agree with Mr. Cochrane. We have agreed this is a risk register of potential things that could go wrong and how we protect the organisation. So the 7,000 breaches that we get per day, they don't breach our systems, so there's nothing to report. If we did have a major breach or we had a major cybersecurity threat, we would be reporting that to this committee. So that would be the incident report. An email, we have 405 staff. When we get an email that doesn't look quite right, it gets looked at straight away, and we have systems in place to deal with that. As long as our systems haven't been breached, there's nothing to report to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you want to comment, Nienke, right, further? Sam, any comments from you as an experienced man looking at potential cybersecurity issues? No? Okay. Anything else on this particular topic? I just want to give one silly illustration. I worked for 10 years for an organisation called the World Bank, which has very sophisticated computer systems. But it was breached seriously one day when a major porn site penetrated and sent porn emails to the staff, which I think none of them wanted, I suspect. Anyway, but it took 2 weeks to cleanse the system. All right? This is how sophisticated some of these things are. All right, and it didn't do any damage. It was just bloody annoying. All right, that's all. Nothing was compromised. It was just a damn nuisance. Swapping notes all the time. Anyway, I make that point. Okay, that's irrelevant anyway. So now the floor is yours, Cam. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question about the overall targets and where we're currently sitting. So we're currently sitting, out of those 10 organisational risks, only 2 of them are actually at target.
So you're on page.
Sorry, page 42 of the report.
Right at the beginning. Okay.
And then if we go into a little bit of a deeper dive, so looking at Org 1, which is the loss of life, etc. So there's control titles, and we've got risk treatment titles. So my question is with these risk treatment items that are in progress, when they are actually completed, are we confident that it'll actually bring the risk down to the target? Like, are we actually doing enough to get to our targets that we have set ourselves?
Yeah, I think when you look at each of the components, there's quite a lot set out as to what we are doing to actually do that.
But we could be doing a lot, but it still may not make the target. So is the target realistic, or are we confident that what we're doing will actually get us to the target? So in a year or 18 months' time, will we see nearly 10 out of 10 sitting on target?
Nienke or Mark, Nienke, please proceed. Right?
Yes, it is true that we're tracking towards targets, and this is a process over time. We've folded out the risk treatments more extensively in this report to actually do more storytelling on what is in place and what's progressing. Some of these things simply take time. Some of the treatments are in progress, are just started or have to start, so that's also a reason why you don't see any movement. But you're right, if the risk treatments are fully implemented and then you do a full new assessment of whether you can say they're all effective, in turn turning your control to fully effective. And when all your controls are fully effective, you're hitting your future target or the final target that you want to hit. For some of the risks, there's quite a difference between risks that we can have more influence over, like the organizational risk number 1. The consequence will always be high, but you can bring the likelihood right down by having really good process in place, educating your staff really well, do all these things. For example, for organizational risk number 6, which is influence from outside that we can only influence or control to a certain extent, that journey just simply will be longer to get to that target, because implementation actions sometimes are influencing. Is us making submissions, us debating things with central government. Whether or not they're going to take on board what we want them to do is a different thing. And as part of the review, I guess we would also look at treatments that may have to be added or treatments that are not that successful and maybe need to be amended as a result. So that process will start sort of in the next 3 months to come back
Okay,
in
thank you, Nicola.
February, March.
That
Yeah.
gives me confidence. that
Mark
it's
would like to
under control.
add something to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you, Ninka. Look, I think it was a really good question, and it is based on subject matter expertise. So the question is, once we've completed the treatments, are we satisfied that the controls and all the treatments mean that our current risk is going to be our target risk, and we're happy with that, and it'll, there will be no consequences outside of that? Well, the answer is no. So we best endeavour to use our subject matter experts to come up with making sure that we've got the right safeguards in place to stop that potential event ever from happening. And it's part of a constant review process, but it is not an exact science. It is not, you must have 7 controls and then your risk is moderate. It is based on experience. It is based on just making sure, and a constant review process. But we go pretty tough on ourselves. We've identified the risk, and it's not about having the minimum amount of controls in place. It's about making sure that we think we've got the controls in place that will stop that from happening. The other question is, once you reach the target risk, should it come off the risk register? Some of them will, and some of them won't. So failure to maintain business continuity for essential services, we've already reached the target risk, but that it still remains a top 10 risk for the organisation.
Good response.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, if I can just add to that as well, and I've got a question, is that if we're identified initially that it's an extreme risk and we only ever end up current at high, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's actually saying to the organisation, we need to be laser focused in this area, so that we need to keep coming back to it and coming back to it and coming back to it. So it's actually not, don't necessarily see the current as high as a bad thing. It's actually telling the organisation, we need to be hot in here and stay hot in here. So it's just,
I mean, that's partly a question, surely, of the extent to which we have any control over these risks,
yes,
all right?
yep.
Yeah.
But my question is, I would have thought insurance would be one of our top 10 risks. Is it hidden in BCP or some other area? And I'll just make the comment, if it is hidden, that's a conversation. If it's not there, that's a conversation. If the Canterbury Council 10 years ago had insurance as a risk sitting out, they may not have ended up in the predicament they were after the earthquake. So it's just a question, is it hidden? Okay, should it be hidden? And if it's not there, should it be there?
Actually, this item's been potentially on the agenda for this.
I know we've been having
for
discussions
a while,
in a wider circle, but this is specific to
But
risk.
specifically for the first meeting next year, we're going to address the question of insurance. Anyway, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So there's 2 things. Yes, there's a lot of work involved in looking at how we insure the council's assets. The question is, should insurance be a risk? So we, at the moment, in terms of this top 10 risk register, insurance is a control. So it's one of the ways. Insurance is just one of the ways that you transfer your risk. So, but I think what you're asking is, should we have a risk on the risk register that says council is unable to get insurance? So at the moment, we do have insurance and it is in control, and we're happy with that. So our risk of not getting insurance right now is, the risk of getting no insurance whatsoever is slim to none because of the syndicate that we're in and the insurance that we get. The risk of our premiums continuing to go up is very, very high, and that's what we're dealing with. So I don't believe the risk is sufficient enough for it to be a top 10. But we are worried about not so much getting insurance, what it's costing the council. So we're working on that, and that's why we've got that other work stream before the committee.
So we will be looking at this. It's one of the items on the agenda for next.
Yeah, and I
And
understand
it's been
there's,
on the agenda
there's a
for a
lot
little
of,
while, I think, to be fair.
a lot
Mark,
of
yeah.
work
So-
going on around it. I thought being grossly, if we end up grossly underinsured, not no insurance, but grossly underinsured for whatever reason, and that's certainly a massive organisational risk, but that's just, thank you.
Point noted.
Appreciate your answer.
Noted.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else at all on the risk? And Brenda, thank you for raising that point about cybersecurity. Oh, sorry, Jocelyn, yes.
Thank you. So I do have another question, and I suppose I'm going to use the cybersecurity as an example because I can't find any other examples. So on page 64, it says that it's 35%, this work is 35% completed. And there's a number, there's 5 items in relation to this, 35% completed. But when you look at the heat map on page 63, it looks as if we have met our target.
I think that's,
How does that work when we haven't, when there's a lot of areas that the work hasn't been completed?
So the targets are, the target is the same as where we want to be. It's because all the controls have to be deemed effective. So when the controls are all scored effective, you end up in your target rating. And we do think all the controls are effective. The risk treatments is telling the story as how we implement that control. And all those risk treatments are annual treatments that we do, carried out by the IT team to manage these threats. And the 35% simply is the score of tasks completed in Q1. So it's progressing. It will go up as the year progresses, just like an annual performance against that risk treatment.
Thank you for that. So it means that that it will stay in that box.
Yes, as Mark explained, some of these risks will stay where they are because simply they remain big risks for this organisation. Yes.
Okay, because I with a lot of others, you see where the progress is, and you see that dotted line going to where the target is. Thank you for that explanation. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may just add to that. So the main reason why we've downgraded to 35% complete is because we've just completed a cybersecurity audit, which has, for a number of years, it's had, I might get my numbers wrong, but I think it's had 250 controls that you need to have in place. And because cybersecurity is advancing, it has now been upgraded to 350 controls that you have to have in place.
Okay.
So there's more work that we have to do to get the big tick. So a lot of the recommendations of that cybersecurity relate to these risk treatments. So our Chief Information Officer has recognised the fact that whilst we were dealing to 250 issues and action points, it's now 350, but that's been applied to the sector. It's not suddenly we've got worse.
Yeah.
And so the 35%, so yes, we are very close to where we want to be in terms of the target risk, but in terms of the work that we need to do with the treatments, there's a bit more work to do.
It's always developing.
And we're being prudent. And so
Yeah.
we have, instead of saying 75%, we've actually gone, well, there's a lot of work still to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Right. In that case, if I can just, this is an easy one, I think. I move that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives and notes this report, including Appendix 1 to this report. I move from the chair, seconded by Jocelyn. All those in favour will please say aye or indicate aye. The contrary, no. It's carried. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, Sharon, the Internal Audit Work Programme. Page 76. Where's Lawrence? Is he online? He's online. Oh, okay, right. You would like to introduce it, Sharon, please, and we'll proceed from there. I think it's a very straightforward report with some good news in it. Anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Morena Committee members. Yes, this is the standard report that you normally get. I just want to point out paragraph 9, page 77, which gives you an indication of what will come to your February meeting, which will be an audit work programme for the next calendar year and an outcomes report on the audits that we've achieved and completed in 2023. So I'm here for any questions if there are some.
Thank you, Sharon. The floor is open. Did you want to make a comment, Mark, of any sort?
I'm just going to hand back to Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'm going to hand back to Sharon.
Okay.
Yes, there is one small correction. Page 78, the last of the risk ranking high, which is compliance with general expenses policy. That scoping is underway and almost complete, so we would actually change that to a green. And whilst I'm on this page, just to refer to the earlier commentary about the control findings from Ernst & Young, and with regards to service requests, if you're wondering how that fits in, that's the last of the moderate risk rankings there, where we have an ongoing task to delve in and find out why Ernst & Young had found those, made those conclusions against their findings, and do what we can to rectify that.
Thank you, Sharon. Well, I think the February meeting is going to be where we talk about the future year's work programme and get the final outcomes report on the internal that's completed in calendar year 2023. So there will be further discussion, much more discussion, I think, in the February meeting on this topic. Anything further? Well, okay, in this case, I move that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives and notes the internal audit progress report and on the work programme for 2023. Well, why doesn't somebody else move that? Thank you. Moved by the Mayor, seconded by Councillor Coe. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, no. Carried. Now, legislative compliance, and Sarah is here. No, not Fiona. Fiona in place of Sarah, yes. Thank you, Fiona. Please. Isn't it amazing just how much legislative compliance there is, just when you look through it? It's almost like an encyclopedia, isn't it? But I assume that it's all present and correct, right? Thank you, Fiona. Would you like to make any comments? Right?
Kia ora koutou. No, other than I'm acting for Sarah Watty, so just presenting the legislative compliance report for 1 July through to 30 September. Take the report as read and happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, I don't think we need to plough through the list of legislation we have to comply with, but there may be some comments or questions on the legislative compliance breaches, which are set out, I think, in very clear detail. So the floor is open. David.
I'd just like to ask the chair whether he's campaigning on behalf of ACT to have a Minister of Deregulation. Get rid of some of these regulations and rules.
Well, people knowing my politics will know I have no requirement or ability to speak on behalf of ACT.
That's why I asked you.
Well, it just indicates the degree of compliance that there is there, right? I'm sure Local Government New Zealand, in conjunction with the Kapiti Coast District Council, could draw the attention of the incoming government to areas where this report could be reduced, right? If that's your question, right? That's my response.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Sure.
Local Government New Zealand are being already quite proactive with their communications with central government. So if this committee had a concern around anything, it would be good to write to the President and Chief Executive of Local Government New Zealand.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, I mean, it is a heavy workload doing this, and it has to be done absolutely correctly. Which is not a difficulty, of course, for KCDC staff, but I mean, it's a strong obligation, right?
And I think it would be quite powerful because mayors, I mean, it even writes directly to ministers, There's mayors, there's another letter from a mayor, but they wouldn't often get letters from independent chairs of audit and risk with the credentials that this chair has.
I'm sorry, what are you saying, Janet? Sorry.
I'm saying you have a powerful voice, potentially.
Well,
She's saying that she expects Mr. Seymour to appoint you to a working party.
Precisely.
Gosh, you're being very controversial this morning, David. I don't know what you're trying to goad me into. Anyway, I haven't been asked, but I stick close by the phone, right? All right. So look, let's look at the non-compliance, the breaches. If there's any discussion on them, I think they're very well set out. My only concern was on page 111, where we talked about section 35 2AA. It wasn't very clear what exactly that's all about, and I understand it's to do with monitoring of coastal hazard information or some words to that effect. That was my only comment on it. But the breaches there are not serious in my view, and some of them relate to being transparent in one or two areas where we weren't, which previously in terms of the Otai Hangar, no, it was in terms of the Otaki water supply, wasn't it? Where we had it in committee before, and it's now here, as I recall. Yeah. Did you want to respond to my comment? That is what section 35.
In regards to section 35, so that section requires local authorities to gather information, monitor and keep records, and the section 2B is the efficacy and effectiveness of policies, rules and other methods in its policy statement and plan. So that's in regards to planning. That's my understanding.
Yeah. Yep. Well, look, if there are no further questions,
I've got a
sorry,
question.
Jocelyn, yes, please. Sorry.
Yes, so thank you. So on page 112, there's this procurement breach. I don't actually quite understand the corrective action that's written there.
Yes, I mean, this just indicates a little bit of sloppiness, I think, that occurred, Jocelyn, really, but I don't know how to reply otherwise. Right?
Well, I suppose it's about the wording that's there. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we don't know how or why we don't know why it occurred, I think, or how it occurred, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I think that's absolutely right. I think that's, in essence, there has been some turnover in the team. The non-compliance, there's no contracts or procurement paperwork. We believe there will be contracts and procurement paperwork. It's just with the turnover in staff, the team are actually just looking to find that documentation and make sure it's in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, look, if there are no further comments or questions on this very well documented piece of paper, I'll ask somebody else to move the resolution when I find it.
I think it's page 76.
Page 76.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Page
80. Page 80.
Page 80. Thanks, Andy.
This is the mapping one.
Page 80. Will someone move that the Risk and Assurance Committee notes legislative non-compliance for the first quarter of the financial year from 1 July 23 to 30 September 23? Will somebody move that, please? Willing to? Councillor Coe, Liz, move, seconded by the Mayor. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. It is carried. All right. Next item, the Forward Work Programme is set out for us, in particular on page 115. We have an exciting year, an exciting 2024 ahead of us, as you can see. We had a slow start this year for various reasons, right? Partly my absence, we didn't get cracking until April, May, which was later than normal. We held 4 meetings. There are 5 meetings scheduled for next year. Are there any comments? I want to make a few comments on the general role of the committee. Perhaps to have perhaps the first meeting of next year would be a good opportunity to talk about how we went and what impact we had this year. But I have raised in the past the question of whether with due respect, I've said before, we have a bit of a checklist approach here. That's not to criticise the checklist at all, but it is going through a standard list. And I think I just raised the question verbally before, which I would like to have discussed in a bit more detail at the first meeting of the new year, about whether the role of the committee is sufficient. In particular, whether, like some audit and risk committees, as they call them in other councils, we ought to have some more role, some greater role than we currently do have in the long-term plan issue. And I'm more interested in particular in a more coordinated review of asset resilience across the board. And also related to that, the whole question of emergency management, which is a key issue in terms of the risk of the whole of Kapiti, not the whole of Kapiti Council, but the whole of Kapiti functioning in a sense, if there are problems. So I just flag now that I propose to raise this issue at the first meeting in the new year, and I will circulate a paper. So any comments on that? But otherwise, the 5-meeting program there is there for your review and comment. All right. Anything?
Yeah, look, Dave, could I, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, could I comment? I fully concur with your comments. I think we could take a more proactive role in this group, and I think it would be useful to have just a general discussion, even a brainstorming or just a chat around the table as to the role of this group and how we could take a broader perspective perhaps and a more proactive approach in some areas. I think that would be really useful, even if it's offline in a workshop kind of session or something.
All right, I would circulate a paper beforehand, do
Yeah.
a bit of homework so we're not discussing things in a vacuum. Darren, I haven't discussed this with you. I think I flagged it in the past, and obviously I would be, it would be very important for me to discuss any draft I do with you. But I'm just flagging that I'm just foreshadowing this is a matter I would like to have discussed at the first meeting next year. All right. All right. Any other comments on the work? Oh, David, who's that?
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
David.
thank you, Chair. We discussed this a bit at the briefing earlier the week. I think it's important. And we both raised this when we were first appointed about May this year. There's a fundamental issue with resource and risk and assurance committees as to whether they just look at what's put in front of them, or whether they flag things that they not just the independent members, any member think looks a bit odd, or whether they occasionally, with council blessing and instruction, undertake a deep dive and look at emergency management system or asset resilience or whatever else we want to think of. This chart, for example, is in colours just to keep us awake because each item is the same right through. It looks like a box tick. It's not box ticking. We do more than that, but there is a fundamental point as to whether we're accountable when the Cabinet Observer or somebody rings us up and says, "What about that crisis?" And we go, "Well, it wasn't on our agenda. We don't know anything about it." Or should we have particular topics like that we are looking at? We can say, "Yes, we're looking at this or that." So there's a bit of thinking to be done by council as to what it wants this committee to do.
Thank you, David. I like your terminology, occasionally diving deep into certain things. I think that is a good way of describing it. All right, thank you. Any other comments from any other members here? Yeah, Jocelyn.
Thank you. So I agree with Mr. Cochrane in terms of his analysis of, what potentially we can consider. Going forward, one thing I wanted to raise though, in relation to emergency management and resilience, so as chair of the Climate and Environment Subcommittee, we've just established a think tank to look at climate change and resilience, and this is going to result in a strategy. So that work has just started and will carry on for the next 6 or 9 months. So just to flag that, and so there's some synergies there that could be useful here.
Absolutely, and we would need to coordinate with any other council committees which are working in this area. Thanks for that comment,
Thank you.
Jocelyn. Right, if there are no further comments, would somebody care to move that the Risk and Assurance Committee approves its forward work programme for the 2024 calendar year as set out in Appendix 1? Would someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Coe, Liz, or moved by Jocelyn, seconded by Liz, right? Councillor, I should use the formal titles, but I prefer to use first names anyway. I'll put the motion. All those in favour will say aye, the contrary no. The ayes have it. All right. Now, next item is the confirmation of the minutes, which are attached. Right. Okay, I will move that they are attached. I'm speaking on page 117. I previously reviewed and agreed to them, so I will move that that the Risk and Assurance Committee confirms the minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting held on the 21st of September. I will move from the chair. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Coe. I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye, contrary no. The ayes have it. That concludes the public business. We will now go into the public excluded session, and I've got to move the motion, which is somewhere here. Where is it? Look, as far as I'm concerned, community board members are welcome to stay for this, all right? I think that's quite acceptable. Where's the motion?
In the open agenda, just on the back page there.
Oh, here we are. Here it is. I move that pursuant to Section 48 of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, the public now be excluded from the meeting for the reasons given below, while the following matters are considered. Do I need to read the whole one? No, that's enough. All right. Moved from the chair, seconded by the mayor. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, no. Carried. We are now, the public is now excluded. Okay.